evening, everyone. I'd like to just start off, Grace and I would like to take the opportunity to acknowledge the Budja, the land that we are on today. Myself as an immigrant and on behalf of Inclusion Solutions, we do feel it is incredibly important to acknowledge the traditional culture moving forward in an inclusive Australia that I want to be a part of. Between the ages of 0 and 7 is when we start to really develop our unconscious biases. Now, this isn't our parents' fault, although our upbringing has a large part to play on it, but it's through every interaction we have, through the people that we meet, through the books that we read, the shows that we watch, and the ridiculous amount of media that is always plastered across everything. And the reason I mention that is because our unconscious biases have a large part to play in the prejudices we have and the stigmas that we carry not only into community, but that we hold within ourselves as well. When I read that, I thought, wow, 0 to 7, that's an extremely young age. I'm acutely aware of this as a father with 2 young children as well. And that really made me realize the influence that I have, not only on my kids, but looking at the school system, looking at what they're going to be engaged in moving forward, the people we hang around with, the conversations we have, the shows we let them watch, the books they read. And that's essentially what brings us all here today, is we're in a time where we need to acknowledge, but challenge and question what those unconscious biases are, and think about how we can challenge, question, and change a lot of those prejudices and stigmas that we hold. Now, those of you that were at the August Forum in 2020, I did a short presentation of inclusion in a changing world. And something that I've really come to realize is that we need to start thinking about inclusion in a changed world. Things are probably not going to be the way that they were. And in a lot of ways, that is actually a good thing. Unfortunately, this epidemic has affected people in terrible ways right across the world. But one of the things I would like to reflect on is those of you that are part of the team and that have stood still long enough to have a conversation with me, I love Q&A. It's something that I used to watch quite religiously on ABC channel until they moved it to a Thursday night, which I'm not happy about. But every Monday there was a great show, Q&A, panel of experts in a variety of fields, a few politicians, and just a good discussion. A little while ago, I watched it, and there was an advocate, an academic, a lecturer, by the name of Rosemary Case. Now, she is an incredible woman. She is also a person that uses a wheelchair. And I'm going to be paraphrasing here, and I am going to be oversimplifying what you're about to hear, but I think it's still something worth mentioning. One of the things that she had said, and I think we can all agree, is that through COVID, social isolation really did not discriminate. Everyone was impacted in some degree. Some people that were actually very socially included, social isolation hit the hardest because people weren't used to it. And one of the things that she did say, as a person who uses a wheelchair and a person with a disability, is that in a lot of ways, what COVID did do as well is it allowed opportunities for people that were traditionally excluded from community, that couldn't access events, that couldn't go to all the meetings, that couldn't participate in activities, all of a sudden had this other avenue that they were able to be included in community. With the move to this virtual world, yes, we lost so much when it comes to physical interaction, but for a lot of people, in particular people with disabilities, and in particular people that had access requirements that were barriers to be at events, to be at those meetings, to be included in forums, all of a sudden, those opportunities were there. And a lot of people with disabilities suddenly were included a lot more because of the change to this digital world. And I thought that was really interesting when I heard it, and I myself was affected by social isolation at a time, although I had 2 young kids trying to do work from home and I guess think about how I can still connect with people. And when I heard that, I thought that in itself is challenging the stigma And that in itself is looking at the silver linings that we always need to look at and look for in any situation that we're in. Now, I'm about to hand over to the magnificent Grace Mills, who I have worked with and looked up to for the last 3 years, and I'd love her to share her story. Over to you, Grace.
I'm just glad he didn't call me amazing, in all honesty. When I was thinking about the phrase challenging the stigma, I had to roll my eyes a little bit because I do this every day in my job and it's second nature. However, I had to really think back to a time when I was not challenging the stigma. And believe me, when I was young, I certainly did not challenge things at all. I was very quiet, followed the rules, teacher's pet, effectively. And then I graduated from high school and thought, okay, I'm going to go off to university now. I started my degree in conservation and wildlife biology. Loves the frogs, by the way, just they're amazing. So I did my first year, everything seemed to be going well, and then I got sick. 3 months later, I was lying in a hospital bed being told that I would never see again. And there was simply no idea what was happening to me. They had an idea of what had done this to me, but that was about it. So I thought my degree was downhill and that I would never go to uni again. So I took about 18 months to sort of get my thoughts together. Eventually, I got up and thought, I have to go and do something or I am going to go round the bend. And this is not a good analogy to use either, so please forgive me for that. I went to the Association for the Blind, which is now referred to as Visibility, and did a Certificate 1 in business, learning how to use screen reading technology. So I use JAWS, for those of you who have never heard of it before. It's a text-to-voice program that allows me to use a computer in the same way all of you do. And believe it or not, a lot of the things that I use with JAWS, you use every day. And the only difference is it says it out loud to me. So I did that. I then went back to university thinking, why not? I'll give this a crack. No one in my faculty has ever done this degree while being blind before. Why not give this a shot? We'll see how we go. I lasted another 18 months doing 2 subjects a semester, having exams that were online and away from the other students because I needed a separate invigilator, and I also needed a computer that had JAWS on it. And a $2,000 screen reading program is not a standard thing you apply for at uni. So I did that. I got halfway through my second year. And then it clicked in my head and thought, actually, I don't want to do this anymore. And that was a hard thing to realise because growing up for so long doing one thing and then having to change is not an easy task for anyone. So I was sitting in one of my lab classes one day thinking, I can't look down a microscope anymore. That had never bothered me before until that day. And I thought, well, I need to think of something else now. So I withdrew from my uni course with no idea what I was going to do after that. I went back to Visibility and volunteered teaching a couple of other people a similar thing what I had done with the certificate there. I knew that was going to happen. With the Certificate 1 in business, which was no longer running, but people still wanted it. So I did that for a while, and I felt more like I was floating along rather than with a purpose in life or a valued role of any kind. And then I got an email from a former teacher saying, they're doing this conference at Fairground in July, in about 4 months. Would you like to be part of the team that is going to do this conference? I thought, yes. Okay, why not? Got nothing else to do. I'm either at home watching movies or I'm at Visibility volunteering in almost anything I can just so I can do something other than be at home and watching movies. So I went to this meeting and 4 months later, we're at this conference. Had a fantastic time. Met 2 friends there who I'm still friends with and thought, this could be really good. I didn't know it at the time. we were sitting in the dining hall and we were just looking around at all of the people around us thinking, we are so out of our depths. We are a group of young people with disability aged 14 to 25. Do we belong here? On the second day, we said yes. The first day, we said no way. When we got to the second day and said yes, we thought, no, this is good. We feel proud to be here now. That then led to other opportunities that I didn't even think were possible. Again, I finished that project, I spent some time on my own and thought, now what do I do? Then a volunteering opportunity came up to join a newly forming group, as Denver mentioned, with WIDAN. And I had no idea what that would be at the time, and neither did any of us who have been part of that group since. However, that turned out to be one of the most fabulous experiences I've had, and a number of us have had since then. So I was there for about 2 years, and in that time other opportunities came up, and some of them I said no because I wanted to focus on what WIDAN was doing. And then I reminded myself that I needed to have a life as well, and I couldn't just be Gracie worker bee, even though that is my preferred MO. So when that finished up, I thought I have to do something before I leave. I want to actually have something that I've said yes to before I go. I don't want to be in the same position again where I've finished my task and then I do nothing. So for the first time, I started looking for opportunities myself instead of waiting for them to show up, I don't know, by divine intervention or literally coming through my email. I wasn't sure, but I wanted to take that opportunity myself for a change. And my mother gave me a fantastic piece of advice about 6 months before I finished my term with WIDAN, and she said to me, just say yes. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a volunteering opportunity or a paid one, but say yes, Gracie. Okay, Mum, I will. I was then contacted by an old colleague at Children and Young People with Disability Australia to join their board. I had no governance experience whatsoever. I was 24, didn't even know what a board was, in all honesty. I had a vague idea, but not 100% on all the governance procedures. I said yes. I'm still there. 5 years later, I'm still sitting on the policy committee, and everyone loves my wordsmithy policies every 2 months. But I said yes. And that has been another valuable experience for me, as I have learnt how governance boards work. I understand how organisations are formed, and the responsibility, it's incredible. And it's an incredible experience for anyone in their professional career to sit on a board of any kind. So I didn't know what else to say at the time, but here I am 5 years later, and I would still tell my younger self, go for it. Bearing that in mind, I've had other opportunities as well, such as with Telethon with their youth advisory group, which is again starting up in a few months. And now I've transitioned out of that, I'm now also involved with steering the group's direction at 2 meetings a year, thinking back to when I was 16 or 17 years old, what kind of activities would I like to take part in? And other opportunities, such as with Inclusion Solutions, where I was offered my first paying job. And I didn't think that I would ever get a paying job. So here I am now, 4 years later, and I'm speaking on stage and shaking like a leaf. So I'm here now, and it was simply because I said yes. And it took me a long time to come to that conclusion because I was so used to not challenging the stigma surrounding that word. I had been so used to thinking that, oh, it might come, it might not, I don't know. When what I really should have done was say yes. And I'm so glad that I did. And it took me such a long time to get to that, but I wouldn't change any of that. So I guess a take-home message, if you want to plug, is take whatever opportunity is presented to you, even if it doesn't work out. or it's only for 6 months, or you spend it for the rest of your life doing it because you love it. Because if you do something you love, then you'll enjoy it all the more. So I would really encourage you all to change the stigma around the word yes. As best as you can, even just once a week, tell yourself, I am strong, I am powerful, and I can do this, because you can. Thank you.
Just to end off, I would just like to mention that Grace took a bit of coercing to get up on the stage with me today, and just wanted to reiterate that the power of yes. If one thing you can take home is the power of yes, and listen to your mum. I think that was a good one as well. Thank you very much.
Love you, Mum.